Hey everyone, we'd love to hear from you. What tool review would you like us to create an in-depth analysis video on? Drop your suggestions in the comments below, and we will get started on making the most requested one. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we upload new topic podcasts every day.
You ever imagine like stepping right into your favorite game? Like actually feeling the wind and talking to characters that react to you like you're part of their world? That's kind of what we're going to be diving into today, the whole AI and VR thing that's like changing the way we even think about gaming.
Yeah, it really is amazing how these technologies, AI and VR, are reshaping not just the way we play games, but like the whole concept of what a game even is.
Exactly. We've got a whole bunch of articles and research here, and it seems like AI and VR are like totally changing everything from how games are made to how we experience these virtual worlds. So where do we even start with all this?
Well, I think a good place to begin is to maybe unpack how AI is actually being used in games like right now.
Yeah.
It's not just about making the enemies tougher or anything.
Right.
It's about things like NPCs that can learn and adapt on the fly. And even AI tools that are helping developers like build these massive, crazy, dynamic worlds.
So you're saying it's not just about making games harder, it's about making them more like real.
Exactly. Like take procedural generation, for example.
Yeah.
Instead of having to design every single little detail of a world by hand, AI can just create all sorts of crazy stuff, like it's diverse landscapes, dungeons, even entire quest lines. Every time you play, it's totally unique.
Okay, now that is impressive. But I'm sure there's got to be some crazy technical challenges involved, right? I mean, it can't be easy to create AI that can like build a believable world, can it?
That's where it gets really interesting. You get algorithms like Perlin noise, for example, which are used to generate like realistic looking terrain and stuff. The trick is to make sure the AI isn't just spitting out random garbage. It has to create content that feels intentional and engaging.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's not just about chucking code at a problem and hoping for the best. It's about creating AI that actually understands like what makes a good game world.
Exactly. And that's just one example.
Yeah.
We're also seeing AI being used to create smarter, more reactive, non-player characters.
Oh, right, NPCs?
Yeah. For anyone listening who might not know, those are the computer-controlled characters you interact with in a game.
Right.
And with AI, these NPCs can go way beyond those old pre-programmed dialogue trees and start to feel like actual characters, Just imagine like an NPC that remembers your past conversations and like reacts accordingly. Or one that learns your combat style and like figures out how to counter you.
Oh, wow. So every time you encounter them, it could play out differently. You couldn't just memorize the best strategy because the game is always changing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it adds a whole new level of depth and replayability to games. It's almost like having your own personal game master who's tailoring the experience just for you. And speaking of tailoring experiences, some of this research is talking about AI tools that could like make game development accessible to anyone, not just these big studios with tons of money.
Whoa, wait. Really? You mean everyday people could use AI to make their own games?
There are already some AI tools popping up like Scenario and Promethean AI that help with things like asset creation and level design. These tools let aspiring developers focus on like their creative vision without needing to be coding geniuses.
So AI isn't just changing how we play games, it's changing who gets to make them. That's actually a really exciting thought. But before we get too deep into that, let's talk about VR. What's the big deal with virtual reality and how is it like revolutionizing gaming?
Well, VR is all about creating a sense of presence. Like you've actually stepped into the game world. It's way more than just visuals on a screen. It's about engaging all your senses and using your actual physical movements.
So it's about tricking your brain into thinking you're really there.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with like realistic graphics, spatial audio, even haptic feedback, you get an experience that you just can't get from traditional gaming.
Okay, I can see how that would be really immersive. But is it just about cool tech and good graphics? Like what kind of impact does that level of immersion have on the actual gameplay?
Just think about it. Imagine playing a horror game where you can like actually feel a chill as you're walking down a dark hallway. Or a puzzle game where you physically have to manipulate objects to solve problems. VR can evoke real emotions and engage you on a much deeper level than just looking at a screen.
That's a good point. You're not just passively watching anymore. You're like physically present and reacting to the environment. That must change the whole dynamic of how you experience a story or a challenge.
For sure. It's just a way more visceral and impactful experience. And when you combine that immersive power of VR with the intelligence of AI, well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay. I'm starting to see how AI and VR could really take gaming to a whole new level. But if we're talking about AI controlling characters and environments in VR, that just sounds like something straight out of Ready Player One.
Yeah.
How close are we to that kind of reality, and what would that even look like?
Honestly, we're closer than you might think.
Yeah.
The real key is how these two technologies work together.
Yeah.
AI brings the intelligence and adaptability, and VR provides the platform for that truly immersive interaction.
Right.
Imagine, for instance, a VR game where you're negotiating with an AI-controlled character. It's reading your body language, your tone of voice, and it's adapting its strategy based on how you're acting.
So it's not just about what you say, it's about how you act in that virtual world. That's pretty mind-blowing.
Exactly. And that's just scratching the surface. Imagine AI-powered environments that react to your every move, creating dynamic events and challenges based on your choices. The line between player and game world starts to get really blurry.
It's almost like you're stepping into an interactive movie where you're not just following a script, but like actually shaping the narrative as you go. But wouldn't that take a crazy amount of processing power and development time?
That's actually where AI can help streamline things. Think of AI as like a partner for developers, not just a tool for creating cool features.
Okay.
AI can help automate tasks like level design or even generate character dialogue. That frees up developers to focus on the bigger picture stuff.
So AI is actually making game development faster and more efficient. That makes sense. It's like having an extra set of hands or like an extra brain to help with all the hard work.
Precisely. And that opens up so many creative possibilities. We could see games with these massive, constantly evolving worlds, or games that offer a level of personalization that we never even imagined.
Speaking of personalization, you mentioned earlier that AI tools are making game development more accessible. Could you see a future where players are using AI to create their own custom VR experiences?
Absolutely. So imagine a world where you could use AI tools to build your own VR worlds.
Yeah.
Populate them with AI characters and then share those experiences with other people. It'd be like the ultimate sandbox for creativity and storytelling.
That's an amazing thought. But it also makes you wonder about the role of the player. If we're all potentially creators, what does that even mean for the traditional idea of playing a game?
That's a really great question. And it gets to the heart of how AI and VR are changing, not just how we play games, why we play them. Are we players, creators, or something in between?
It sounds like the line between those roles is getting blurrier all the time. But before we get too philosophical about the future of gaming, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about AI controlling characters in VR. I can see that being super immersive, but couldn't it also be kind of creepy?
I can see what you'd say that. As these technologies get more sophisticated, we need to be very aware of the potential impact on players. The goal is to create engaging and entertaining experiences, not ones that feel unsettling or manipulative.
Right. It's all fun in games until you've got this hyper-realistic AI character staring you down in VR, and you can't tell if it's programmed that way or if it's actually learning and adapting to your fear.
That's why responsible development is so important. Developers need to think very carefully about how they're using AI, especially in immersive environments like VR. It's about finding that right balance between realism and player comfort.
I can see how things could go wrong pretty quickly if we're not careful. But I'm also optimistic about the possibilities. What other trends are we seeing with AI and VR in gaming? What can we expect in the next few years?
Well, on the VR side of things, we can expect even more realistic and immersive experiences. Advancements in things like display technology, haptic feedback, and motion tracking are going to keep pushing the boundaries. Imagine a VR headset that can actually track your eye movements and adjust the focus of the virtual world accordingly. It would create an even more believable sense of depth and presence.
Wow, that sounds incredible. But what about AI? What kind of advancements can we expect in AI-powered gaming?
Well, AI is getting better and better at understanding and responding to player behavior. We could see AI characters that not only react to your actions, but can also anticipate your needs, offering helpful advice or adjusting the difficulty on the fly to make sure you're always engaged and challenged.
So it's not just about AI making games harder, it's about AI making games better, more personalized, and ultimately more fun.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about this whole fusion of AI and VR. We're not just talking about small improvements here. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how we think about and interact with games.
It really sounds like a transformative time for the gaming industry, and maybe even for entertainment as a whole. But with all this talk about AI and VR, I'm wondering, what does this mean for the future of traditional gaming? Are consoles and PCs going extinct?
I don't think it's about one replacing the other. I think it's more about expanding what we even consider a game. Traditional gaming will keep evolving and innovating just like it always has. But AI and VR offer these new avenues for creativity and exploration, creating entirely new genres and experiences that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
So it's not a competition, it's more like an evolution. Each platform and technology has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. And in the end, it's the players who benefit from all this diversity. Whether you prefer the feeling of a controller in your hand, the freedom of VR, or the possibilities of AI-powered worlds, there's a gaming experience out there for everyone.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about AI-powered NPCs, procedural content generation, the immersive power of VR, and the potential for players to become creators. Anything we've missed? Any other key takeaways or thoughts before we wrap up?
I think the most important thing to remember is that AI and VR are tools. And like any tool that can be used for good or for bad, it's up to developers, players, and society as a whole to make sure these technologies are used responsibly and ethically.
That's a really good point. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new technology, but we can't forget about the potential consequences. But on a more positive note, I think it's clear that AI and VR have the potential to revolutionize gaming in ways we're only just starting to understand. It's a really exciting time to be a gamer. We've talked a lot about how AI and VR are like changing the game, but I think the bigger question is, what does this all mean for the future of entertainment? Like in general.
That's a great point. We tend to think about games, but these technologies could change way more than just that one industry. If AI can create believable characters and VR can transport us to other worlds, what does that mean for movies or education or even just how we connect with each other, socially?
That's true. It's not just about better graphics or harder games anymore. It's about fundamentally changing how we experience stories, how we learn, maybe even how we see reality itself.
Exactly. And that's both really exciting and kind of scary. We're going into uncharted territory here.
Yeah.
There's no map for what's coming next. But that's also what makes it so interesting. We have a chance to shape the future of entertainment, to make things that are not just fun, but actually meaningful and impactful.
So if we can fast forward 10, 20 years, what do you think the world of entertainment would look like? Would we all be plugged into virtual worlds living out our fantasies?
I don't think it'll be that simple. I think it'll be more like a mix of real and virtual. A world where technology makes our lives better without completely replacing them. Imagine going to a concert where the band is a hologram, or taking a virtual field trip to the Amazon without even leaving your living room.
That's pretty wild. But I can see how that kind of tech could be powerful, especially for education or even just for helping us understand the world better.
I think that's the key. It's not about escaping reality. It's about expanding it. Using technology to connect with people and ideas in ways we never could before.
So instead of just watching stuff, we become part of it, creating and sharing experiences with others.
Exactly. And I think that's the real potential of AI and VR. It's not about replacing human creativity. It's about giving us the tools to express ourselves and connect in totally new ways.
That's a pretty inspiring way to look at it. But I also got to ask, are there any downsides to this? We talked about responsible development, but are there any inherent risks to blurring the lines between real and virtual?
Well, there are always risks with new technology. We need to be aware of things like addiction and social isolation and the potential for misinformation and manipulation. But technology itself isn't good or bad. It's all about how we use it.
That's a good point. It's up to us to decide what kind of future we want, to use these tools to make a world that's more connected, more fair, and more fulfilling.
Exactly. And that brings us back to what we talked about before, the whole democratization of game development thing. If more people can make games, if we can empower different voices and perspectives, then I think we have a real shot at making sure technology helps humanity and not the other way around.
That's a great message. So listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive into AI and VR gaming, I want to leave you with one last thought. The future isn't something that just happens to us, it's something we create. And with the power of AI and VR, the possibilities are endless.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep dreaming. The future of entertainment is in your hands.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep diving.